Good morning, welcome back to Sky Sports FC. Let's get straight to some major breaking news. Former Premier League striker Charlie Austin has stood by to give us his reaction, and the news relates to Manchester United. We are joined by our football correspondent, Rob Dorset. Rob, what can you tell us?
Well, it's big news coming out of Old Trafford today, and I can tell you that Manchester United are now ready to open talks with Michael Carrick about him continuing in the role as head coach beyond the end of this season. Formal discussions are expected to begin before United's final game against Brighton. Now, United's bosses haven't completely ruled out the possibility of someone else taking charge next season, and they have reached out to other possible candidates. But my understanding is the club hierarchy has now decided that Carrick is the man they want to speak to first. And I don't think it's any huge surprise there. We know that Carrick's been the front runner for the role for some time. His bosses have been very impressed with how he's dealt with the media, his popularity with the players and within the squad, the training sessions and the tactical preparation that he's done, the way he's handled the media, and crucially his kind of inherent understanding of the scale and size and the heritage of a club like Manchester United. But crucially, he's got the results on the pitch. And I think that's finally what's convinced United's bosses. 15 games played, 10 wins, 3 draws. And he's delivered Champions League football, which could be worth up to £100 million to Manchester United in terms of revenue next season. So he's done all that's been asked of him and more since he's had this short spell in charge as Manchester United's head coach. I think what's important to say is that United have been determined that they wanted to have a recruitment process. They didn't want this to be a coronation. It wasn't just going to be handed to Michael Carrick. That's why they've reached out to other possible candidates. But it's been made clear to me now that Carrick is the first choice. He's the one that they want to speak to. And I expect those formal negotiations to begin pretty quickly. It's also been suggested to me that will happen within days and that there shouldn't be too much difficulty in reaching an agreement over the final legal details. So just to reiterate, Manchester United now ready to hold formal talks with Michael Carrick about the possibility of him becoming head coach for next season and beyond. And we expect those conversations to happen over the coming days.
Yeah, but Rob, after you're saying it's not a coronation, they wanted to do their due diligence, wanted to find other managers. But what he's done at Manchester, find other managers, United just squashed all that. And he was the front runner. And this is not news. So after a 0-0 result of the Stadium of Light, it's a perfect time to come out and announce that we're going to open talks. It was almost something. This has almost been on the cards probably for the last couple of weeks, say, because the transformation that he has done to Manchester United has been phenomenal. It really has, right? And he is the number
Absolutely.
one. And he is the number one candidate for the job. I think everybody knew it, but I just felt like for Manchester United, saying we was looking at other avenues and speaking to other managers. I just feel like that was them ticking boxes to just show that they're not just giving it straight to him, but his performance as a manager and Steve Holland and his coaching staff deserve a crack at the whip at being Manchester United manager and coaching staff full time.
Look, I don't think many United fans would disagree with you there, but I'd take issue with you saying that it's just ticking boxes from Manchester United's point of view. You have to remember the history here, Charlie. You have to remember where Manchester United have been. You have to remember that they appointed club legend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at exactly the same point, if you like, when he'd had a great start for Manchester United and then it didn't pan out as he would have wanted and how the football club wanted. They always knew that appointing a former player, there'd be a honeymoon period and there'd be an instant boost. I don't think there was any doubt that Michael Carrick would get a response from the players and get a boost in results. But what they wanted to know was that he was the right man long term. And you have to remember as well that Manchester United have only played in one competition since Michael Carrick's been in charge. They haven't had any European football. The squad, is it big enough to cope yet with all of those extra rigours of extra competitions and Champions League football? That's something that United want to address in the transfer market going forward. So look, I don't think it is a coronation. I don't think this was an absolute given. I understand that
but how many
supporters wanted that to happen.
Rob, how many managers did they go and speak to and try and get after then? Like, what was the pool of managers? Like we speaking earlier regarding Chelsea, and there's 6 managers. How many avenues did they go down? And was there anyone? I know it's Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world, but was there managers going, "I want the job. Yeah, I want the job. I want the job"? Because we never really got to that point. We never. That's
exactly right.
And that's why I was saying it was always seemed to be down one avenue, and that was Michael Carrick.
But I think you're right in saying that Michael Carrick's earned that right. And that's why we've all talked about him in pole position, because he's done such a fantastic job. I don't think anybody inside or outside of Manchester United could deny that Michael Carrick deserved the job. But the way that United's bosses looked at it, is the way it was explained to me, was that he was coming across as the strongest candidate by some distance, and everything he did. And as weeks went on, he became a stronger candidate. And then he delivered Champions League football, which is, all that he could do, really, to make himself the strongest possible candidate for the job. You ask about whether they've spoken to other managers. I don't know names, but I know that they have made contact with the representatives of a number of other candidates. And I expected those to be the likes of Carlo Ancelotti, Thomas Tuchel, Julian Nagelsmann, and Luis Enrique. But all of those candidates have kind of fallen by the wayside, in truth, because Tuchel signed a new contract with England. Ancelotti signed a new contract with Brazil. Nagelsmann, we're not sure what's going to happen with him going forward, but we expect Luis Enrique to sign a new contract with PSG. So United's options elsewhere, I think, were narrowing at a time when Michael Carrick was putting his hand up very, very firmly to show that he was the right man for the job. And I think those two things combined have led to where we are right now. And I expect the formal talks to begin within days. And I think we could get an announcement, we could get a decision before the end of the season. I don't want to jump the gun, because those negotiations haven't started yet. And how do we know that they're going to agree quickly on terms? Look, from the people I speak to, I don't think that's going to be too difficult. I think there will be pretty quick agreement on that. But we don't know. Until those talks have happened, we don't know. That's why I think United would be loath to say, yeah, he's definitely our next man, because there's a negotiation to happen. There's still a process to go through. But all the pointers I'm getting right now are that Carrick's the one that they want. Carrick's the one they're about to begin negotiations with. And I think it's pretty likely, very likely, if not inevitable, that Michael Carrick will be Manchester United's head coach going forward.
Charlie, what's your reaction to Lewis's message on the screen there, who, just to sort of surmise a little bit, starts by saying, is rescuing a sinking ship different to creating a world-class team? And he finishes by saying, not sure that Michael Carrick has the pedigree to consistently beat the best.
But he has Steve Holland, who's arguably one of the best assistant managers around. Let's not forget his part that he is playing there in supporting Michael Carrick. Now, it's like saying creating a team, but it's the recruitment that Manchester United need to get right, because the players they brought in over the last few years hasn't been good enough. The best bit of business is Bruno Fernandes saying, no, I'm not going to Saudi last summer, when the majority of Manchester United fans wanted him to go so they could recoup the money. They've kept Kobe Mainoo. And if they add certain players to the team, then why can't they compete and go deep into the Champions League like the English teams do? Tottenham.
Well, I mean, Cunha's been a good signing, United fans would say. He's got them to the level where they qualified in the Champions League. Maybe not under Ruben Amorim, but, Brian Mbeumo's done a job, I know, off the ball slightly. And haven't you, someone like Paul Scholes out there saying, go and compete with Manchester City. Go head-to-head with them. Go and spend £100 million if you want to be at that level. Is that what they're going to have to do, Charlie?
Well, I think they're going to have to do that to get to that level, because they're going to lose certain players, and certain players are not at that level that are at the football club. And Manchester United fans will know that after watching them. Mark Carrick, Steve Holland, etc., will know that themselves. They want to get players out. But to get to that next level, like you said, Rob, they have only played in the Premier League because they was out of both cup competitions. So now they're going to have more emphasis on them next season, more games, more expectation. They've got to get the right players in, and the right players of European know-how that can go deep into the competitions, because arguably they play for Manchester United, which is one of the biggest football clubs in the world.
Rob, top man, thank you very much.
Look, the one thing I'd say there is that there's been a sea change in strategy from Manchester United in terms of recruitment, and I like what they're doing. I'll be honest, I like what they're doing. If you like, there was some criticism last season, wasn't there, that they hadn't brought any defenders in, they hadn't strengthened the midfield. Well, what happened was United looked at the data and said that to instantly get better results, they needed to score more goals. That's why they put all of their money into Mbeumo and to Cunha and to Sesko. They focused on the top end of the pitch. This summer, they will focus entirely on the midfield. And with the extra money they'll get from the Champions League and hopefully from cutting some costs as well, with some players moving on, the hope is they'll be able to buy a left back, maybe a left winger, and possibly even a centre back. But the priority is the midfield. And if they don't get to do those other positions, they'll wait until the next transfer window to strengthen that. So I think there's a more structured and coordinated plan in the recruitment process than we've seen in recent years for Manchester United. And they've taken exactly the same process when it comes to the head coach, by the way. That's why they didn't just want to hand it to Michael Carrick. They wanted there to be a process. They wanted to do their due diligence. They wanted to avoid some of the pitfalls that have been made in the past and make sure they were doing things properly.
Rob, thank you.
Something quick on Ederson, because many of you are asking me, Fabrizio, it's true, according to these reports in Italy, that Ederson is almost done as a new Manchester United signing. Is going to be the first signing for Manchester United. Guys, the deal is not at the stage yet. The reality is that Ederson is one of the names on Manchester United list. Not from now, not from yesterday, not tomorrow. It's been 1 year ago, the summer 2025. Manchester United recruitment team included the name of Ederson, the Brazilian midfielder, as one of the candidates for the midfield. In 2025 was not possible to proceed. Atalanta didn't want to sell the player. Now the player is up for sale because he's out of contract in 2027 and is not going to sign a new contract. So Ederson is available. Manchester United are aware of that. But my understanding is that Manchester United, yes, are talking to his agents. I told you some time ago. The conversations are active between Man United and the agents. Man United are aware of the price from Atalanta, 45 million euros, this is the price tag, so there are contacts for Ederson, but it's not the only one. Man United could sign 2 or 3 midfielders based on opportunities, based on exits and more, and so the name of Ederson is going to be a really important one, but at the moment, not the only one. There are at least 5-6 midfielders under consideration at Manchester United, and I think this is a really important part of the story before saying that it's already done or agreed. Atletico Madrid had a deal in place on personal terms with Ederson, but then they left the conversation because they don't want to pay 45 million euros to Atalanta, and they are closing in on the deal to sign João Gomes from Wolves. We have to mention more topics, guys, and we have to mention something also about Manchester United on Monday. So tomorrow, Man United could get the final green light, the official approval to receive 44 million euros, a total package of 50 million euros for Rasmus Højlund. Because if Napoli tomorrow get the official qualification to Champions League football, the obligation to buy for Rasmus Højlund will be activated. And so Man United are set to receive 44 million euros on top of the 6 million euros they already received 1 year ago, August 2025, from Napoli for the loan deal. So 50 million euros package set to be activated next week for Rasmus Højlund. Højlund will have a release clause into his contract from June 2027, so not this summer, from next summer, valid for 85 million euros. So this is the story regarding Rasmus Højlund and obviously extra money for Manchester United, so for sure an important topic. Then